Since President Dwight D. Eisenhower, top secret files were created concerning off-world activity and visits to planet Earth. Undoubtedly, over the decades, these files have grown. Area 51 is commonly known. We've heard and seen images of UFOs, but not until now has this been validated and presented to the American people and to the world, as President Donald J. Trump released the first tranche of top-secret files. This is the beginning. There's much more to come. Join John Michael Chambers and guests on a new monthly panel, JMC Broadcast, Off-World with JMC. Premiere episode launches Thursday, June 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com and join us on this intriguing and challenging journey together, taking the Great Awakening to new and higher heights. Come travel through the portal with us. Where we go one, we go all.
June 24th, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers. Welcome to this special JMC Broadcasting special broadcast. I'll be joined by a panel of guests in just a moment. Pardon me. Our focus of discussion will evolve around the significance behind the UFC 250 Freedom event. I know that's a week or two old. However, it's very significant, and it's a nice chapter we can close and move on and get ready for the new world that's going to begin to be born come July 5th. So we will focus our discussion on UFC 250 event and analyze what happens after July 5th up to the midterms. My first guest joining us is retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. You all know Tom Lennox. Also joining us is Will Barney of EnochGS.com. Joining us today in this panel is Captain Rob Cunningham, KUWL Show, and also introducing on camera Kristy Allen, Tsunami of Truth from JMC Broadcasting, will also be joining us. Let's just get right into it. Let's bring our guests on the screen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. All righty. We're going to, as I just mentioned a moment ago, talk about UFC Freedom 250. Allow me to, let me first state this. The content was sent to me by Colonel Lennox. Thank you, sir. And the night before UFC, I read it and scripted it and read it into Eyes on Gitmo, which is a show you should watch. And it went viral. There were over 1 million views just on one post on one social media platform within 24 hours. So, and the reason for that, in my opinion, it was a fantastic summary of truth, of the symbolism and what was really taking place on the White House lawn versus what the Hillary Clintons, Jane Fondas, and mainstream media would tell you. And so, and everyone else in that crowd. And so what I'd like to do with this great panel is walk us through that monologue, that 19-minute piece that went viral. And I'm going to segment it out and then have our esteemed panel give us their views of what they saw and why this is an important event, which is the reason I'm revisiting it. By the way, again, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox sent this to me. It was authored by Suzanne Maresca, Maresca. That's the source, to the best of my knowledge, of the content itself. All right, so here we go. UFC Freedom 250 was a major event taking place on the White House South Lawn. Now, at first glance, a cage fight at the White House may seem like an odd addition to America's 250th anniversary celebrations, but in reality, it is a profound public ceremony that provided the legal mechanism, key words, the legal mechanism, we'll make sense of this in a moment, the legal mechanism for the full implementation of the new American order, the restoration of national sovereignty under the law of the land and God's jurisdiction, to lawfully complete the shift under the law of the land. The sovereigns of that land, we the people, the American people, must give their, keywords here, explicit consent. That is the purpose and was the purpose of UFC Freedom 250, in part. Far more than a sporting event, it served as the public ceremony required under Admiralty law rules. The people's visible endorsement of the transition into America's new order, the one-year process of restoring American sovereignty. I'll continue briefly, and then we'll go around the panel and we'll chip away at this. The following shows the steps that have already been taken in the dismantling of Admiralty law. America recapturing its flag, June 14, 2025, Flag Day, celebrates the adoption of the American flag, of course, of June 14, 1777. It's the true symbol of land jurisdiction and national sovereignty. It was on this day in 2025 that America initiated the legal process of removing itself from British Admiralty jurisdiction in order to restore its sovereignty and the law of the land. I'll conclude in just a moment. America asked to return to God on April 18th, 2026. President Trump, as you may recall, read 2 Chronicles 7, 11, and 12 to the nation as an appeal to return to God in recognition of the original covenant of 1776, the Declaration of Independence. That places the nation under God's jurisdiction. Then we had royal visits as a witness, April 27th through April 30th, you recall, this year. As the living trustees of the Admiralty-based system, the King and Queen serve as legally recognized eyewitnesses. Their presence functions as formal acknowledgement of America completing the required legal steps for sovereign independence. I will pause there. There's more to chip away at. We'll start at the top of the panel. Our good friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. Tom, what do you make of what I've read so far?
I think it's amazing that because we took the fringe off the flag in June 14th of 2025, because the judges all presided with yellow fringed flags signifying the Admiralty law. And then you talked about a couple of other things. And what I've heard recently is the king doesn't like the fact that he was put in that position when he came to visit President Trump. And he wanted to renege on what his agreement was. Now, those of us who know realize that the king is probably non-existent at this point. And we don't even know if it was a real king that came or it was a clone. But my thing is the flag, and every time I see a flag with fringe on it, I realize that the people who put that flag out there do not realize that that flag is no longer the flag of the United States. I saw that on the UFC, on the FIFA soccer game with the US and Australia. And I saw the fringe on the flag and I said, somebody hadn't gotten it yet. That's my comment.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get public reviews and comments about, hey, I saw the fringe on the flag 3 days ago here and there. Why that happens here and there, I don't know. But to your initial point, that Admiralty law is in part represented by that fringe is over. Captain Rob Cunningham, do you care to contribute to what I covered thus far?
Yeah, I think for me, the brilliance of this is that we have we have the moral law, we have the constitutional law, and by going through the process of Admiralty law, we've covered all 3 bases. And as you mentioned, blatant, if you will, mutual consent that we are separating, even if the people, through their loud clapping and cheering and approval, don't fully understand that they're giving their consent, Well, we've lived since 1871 without the other party, the City of London, the Admiralty law handlers, giving us an honest version of mutual consent. They have been deceptive in what the Federal Reserve was, what the District of Columbia was, what the role that the City of London was going to play in usurping our sovereignty through the monetary system. So they took over through invasion and infiltration by perverting mutual consent, because mutual consent infers honesty and full disclosure. There's nothing honest or full disclosure about the way in which the Federal Reserve was imposed on our nation. But that being said, look at what President Trump has done. We have moral law on our side, we have constitutional law on our side, and we're checkmating them by going through their own Admiralty law procedures of getting consent of the people to divorce from the City of London and the King and Queen's Admiralty rule.
Thank you, Captain Rob. Yep, fascinating. And I'm glad we're bringing this panel together to comment on it, because, folks, it wasn't just a fight. It wasn't just a big surprise announcing Big Mike at the end, and we're going to talk about that later too. But it was a very significant situation, and I'm glad this panel is weighing in on it. Let's go to Will Barney. Will, what say you about what I covered so far?
Oh, we're watching history play out here, John. It's remarkable. If people haven't figured it out, we're already in a series of what I call the sequence of events. If we back up a little bit with the trip from the King and Queen to the White House, Donald Trump goes to China. He had some meetings there, some of which is not disclosed yet. He leaves China, and Putin flew in the following morning. I think they were signing agreements. But Donald Trump gets back here in time for the 17th of May to launch a day of prayer, which coincided with the same day that George Washington offered a prayer for our nation. And it was 49 days, 7 times 7, before the 4th of July. So all of this is structured out. We are in the sequence of events, and it's not going to be altered. This is a military plan that has been executed to lay this out. So the country has been encouraged to pray for 10 minutes, minimal a week, for the country leading up to the 4th of July. On the 14th, we had the UFC fight, of course, on the South Lawn at the White House. And we had incredible things that occurred there. Not only was it a great event, and as been indicated by Rob and Tom, that we had a consent of the governed that took place. But the amazing thing is the miracle of the storm. You have a storm heading directly for the White House. It's all red on the radar, and it literally splits in half, goes around the White House, and comes back together, leaving the event unscathed. Was this a coincidence? I don't think so. You literally had heaven given its blessing upon the events of that day. And 10 days following that day is tomorrow, of which we're going to have the rally of all rallies on the Mall in D.C. to kick off the Great American State Fair, of which 10 days later is the 4th of July. So 2 10-day sequences leading up to the 4th of July. You get past the 4th of July, another 10 days, and now you're in the sequence of time when the price floors of metals are supposed to be kicking in. We are literally walking through history here. And I think the amazing thing is we have such a dead media that nobody wants to cover the significance of these events, but they're so huge, and they affect the entire planet. It had to be won here. America had to win it first for freedom to go across the globe. And we are retaking that. We're actually winning something we didn't even win before, and that is complete and total sovereignty. Because for a long time, we've been under this idea that we have been free from England. But as many of us know here on this panel, they've always had their clutches into this country. And what they've did with the corporation and over since 1871 till now has all been about the subjugation of constitutionality, placing us under what is essentially, in every definition of the word, fascism, the corporatization of government. And so it's incredible what we're walking through, because we're literally breaking the shackles of this corporate governance, this fascism, and we are restoring our constitutional sovereignty. It's unbelievable.
So well said. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, Mrs. Fonda. I would like to say, sorry, I'm just having some fun with Hanoi Jane. You know, for clarification to our audience, I announced June 24th because I'm in Thailand, 12 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time. And so for me, it's the 24th of June, and Will is alluding to tomorrow, the 24th, and these events. So just for clarification, so everybody doesn't take their time on the timeline later talking about dates. But thank you very much, Will. Great analysis. Kristy, Tsunami of Truth, I know you've recently written a report and delivered it on Tsunami of Truth, and you just returned from the Fraud Fighter Summit. But what's your comment thus far on what you've heard of this panel and what I've walked us through?
Well, brilliant comments. And basically, we've got the making chaos, basically using the old system to get rid of the old system. That's what I'm seeing happening here. Kind of brilliant. My friend on Facebook, John Brown, is the one that actually put this together, and I want to give him some credit for it. He visited in January. He got to go to President Trump's house. And he's writing a book, and it's incredible stuff what he's put together. And he says, I can't prove any of this, but just look at the coincidences here. And we know that they're not coincidences. And of course, I did a whole podcast on the telling of the bees, which is really so cool. Because in England, if a person leaves the house and moves, the beekeeper had to go and tell the bees that they were leaving, and to introduce the new people that were going to be at the house. And essentially, that is exactly what happened here. We had the king and queen, whoever they are, like Lennox said, whether or not they were clones or not, you know, is anybody's guess, but they showed up, which was a shocker in the United States. That hasn't happened in a long time. And they walked over to where the bees were, and they had the telling of the bees ceremony, if you knew what you were looking at. And wasn't that cool? So a bee landed on Trump's hand, literally. I mean, I don't know how they pulled that off, but it was a jaw dropper.
No. Well, thank you for raising that issue. That's another thing that the public went over everybody's head. You know, what's going on with the bees, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm going to continue now and go through the script, if you will, that I alluded to earlier. I'm going to read a bit and then have the panel weigh in on this as well. So, and Rob Cunningham had sort of segued right into it in his opening talking points. I'll pick up from there. Fed chairman steps down May 15th, 2026. The Federal Reserve has played a central role in upholding the British Admiralty maritime law-based commercial system that powered the debt-based economy. By stepping down, it signals the shift back to American jurisdiction. Now, I'll insert here a quick comment about this, and I'll continue reading. Of course, we have Kevin Warsh as the Fed chairman now, and President Trump, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, he published in Truth Social and X, I believe. Kevin Warsh, you're going to love everything about this man because he is central casting. Now I'll continue reading. The National Prayer of Dedication, May 17, 2026. This comes one full moon, a complete cycle, after the appeal to the nation to turn back to God. The National Jubilee of Prayer is the public act of rededicating America back to God, 2 Chronicles 7:14. It marks the withdrawal of consent from the 1871 commercial system that Will and Rob spoke about a moment ago. It marks the withdrawal of the consent of 1871 commercial system that quietly gave jurisdiction back to the British maritime system and the restoration of the 1776 covenant. So the new Fed chairman sworn in May 25th, 2026, Kevin Warsh, was sworn in under the law of the land, which was clearly signaled by the absence of the gold-fringed flag, indicating Admiralty jurisdiction, and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas administering the oath. Using the old system, as Kristy just mentioned, to end the old system. The transition touches every area of life, spiritual, legal, and economic. And at its core, is the replacement of the foreign-controlled Admiralty law-based legal and financial system that has long dominated the nation. The legal process that began on Flag Day, again, June 14, 2025, is now nearing completion. By dismantling this structure, America removes the foundation that protected corruption, protected debt slavery, and protected treasonous actors loyal to that system. Resistance from those who benefited from that arrangement is inevitable. The transition will involve a turbulent battle against the deeply entrenched system, the storm that will precede the people's new order. Though intense, and Juan O'Savanas talked about this, though intense, this period will be swift and necessary to remove the remaining barriers to national sovereignty. We'll take a pause there and go back to the top of the panel and have Lieutenant Colonel Lennox weigh in on what we've just discussed here.
The interesting thing that I see in this piece is that the lawyers and judges who are members of the bar, better known as the British Accreditation Registry, and who sign all their letters with Esquire, forbidden by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, they are going to have to be retrained. And I guess the best example of that was when Derek Johnson had a discussion with a constitutional lawyer because it was going to be put on a podcast. The podcast was never posted because Derek Johnson ate the guy's lunch on the Constitution because he didn't know it. And he was a lawyer specializing in it. The other thing that I see happening from a legal standpoint with the judges and the lawyers is the question of their oath of office. Donald Trump, back, I want to say 6 to 10 months ago, said something about the oath of office. Maybe it was even before that. And he said, the oath of office is very important. And the Constitution prescribes that you have an oath of office. I took one when I became a second lieutenant in the United States Army. That oath of office is still mine. I am obligated to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, even though I have been, it's not really retirement in the military, it's put on, we call it retirement, so might as well say that, since I was 42. I'll be 81 in August, but I still have to live under that oath of office. And I believe what's going to happen is as people become more sovereign and understand what the oath of office is, they will start doing what people have been doing in North Carolina and Texas, and walking into court and asking the judge to produce their oath of office notarized and certified. And I would venture to guess that 99% of judges, prosecuting attorneys, people who collect money for taxes, etc., do not have a proper oath of office. That is going to be a very big issue after the
Without
4th of
question,
July.
you've raised a whole new narrative I hadn't even realized. How do you see potentially? I mean, it's a crystal ball question, sir, but how do you see that playing out? That's a big undertaking, getting the judges constitutionally and up to speed. What do you
And
see
the
happening?
lawyer and the
And the
lawyers,
lawyer. Hmm.
because the first thing you have to do is the bar is part of the maritime legal system.
Hmm.
The, the fact that they're members of the bar, the fact that they use the signature, Esquire, is a member of the maritime uh, legal system. I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that, but I do know that my friend Lloyd Brunson, he took a case to the Supreme Court. He's not a lawyer. His brother's not a lawyer. They didn't have a lawyer. And they went to the Supreme Court because the Constitution was abridged during the election of 2020. We haven't seen the results of that yet, but I believe the results will be published in the not too distant future. But that means that you and I, under the law of the land, can be our own lawyers in any court in the world. And that's one of the things I see happening is people become knowledgeable and they start walking into a courtroom and saying, all right, how does the law that you're prosecuting me under comply with 1803 Marbury versus Madison decision, which stated that if it doesn't apply to the Constitution, it doesn't work. And the Constitution itself says it is the supreme law of the land. So now
Hmm.
we're going back to the supreme law of the land, and we're going to have to follow Marbury versus Madison. I believe that there are going to be thousands of laws on the books of every state and every federal jurisdiction that are going to be gone. The IRS being the first one, because the IRS was never legally established. And even if it was established under the U.S. corporation, not the Constitution. So that
Safety
whole,
net.
and we've talked that before, but that whole thing, I saw something today where somebody was talking about the debt. The debt is that belongs to the U.S. corporation, not the Republic of the United States. So that 30
Wow.
some odd $1 trillion debt
Mhm.
that's done with fiat currency, when we go to gold-backed
Mhm.
currency in 14 July, what happens? So anyway, my thing is the lawyers are going to have a hard time, a very hard time, once they realize that they're no longer practicing maritime law and they have to go get re-educated. Don't know what that form is going to take, but I think it's going to have to happen. Same with the judges.
Oh,
And I know a lot
mhm.
of
Without
judges. I'm going to have conversations with them at some point. Anyway,
It'll be
I,
fascinating to watch this unfold, sir, what you've
yes,
just laid out. And and I don't think it's something that is the flip of a switch. But I'll be paying attention to this now that you've brought it to our attention. You mentioned two names I want to pedal back to. Our good friend Derek Johnson, But we thank you, Derek, for your knowledge, your photogenic mind, your understanding of the Constitution, your understanding of these executive orders, the PEDS and the Law of War Manual updates, tying it all together, and sometimes under attack from some of us in the movement. We thank you, Derek, for your great work and eating that guy's lunch, which is really a sad commentary that a constitutional attorney doesn't know what our good friend Derek Johnson knows. And that sort of tells you the powers moving back to the people that are living in truth under God's law and the Constitution. Thank you, sir. Let's take the last segment I covered, or anything that Tom Lennox has brought up, or what's on your mind, Captain Rob, moving forward through this dialogue here.
Well, brilliant insight, brilliant observation. And I have heard several times from President Trump, from members close to the administration, talking about the need for retraining bar members in common law. They are going to have to go back and do additional studies and get certifications that have been coincidentally, quote unquote, omitted from every law school, every bar association member that swears an oath to the British Accreditation Registry. They do not swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States. So, if you will, these representatives are taking an oath to pass the bar, and then their fidelity is to an NGO. It's not. It's not to the United States. And one of the things I'd like to do to just bring this point home, I don't know if anyone remembers this or not, but this was a document that was published. If you'll see the date on this, January 2021, and it was ended in January of 2021 with an auto-pen Biden veto. This 1776 report is an educational blueprint. It's an outline that was basically authored by Larry P. Arnn as chairman, Carol Swain, a vice chairman from Vanderbilt University, PhD, had unbelievably distinguished members about getting back to the Constitution. And the contents of it overall are the meaning of the Declaration, a constitution of principles. That is what our Constitution is. We swear an oath to uphold principles that are timeless, immutable, and indestructible. This is not taught in our schools. It's not taught to our lawyers. And we have to reacquaint every single American with what the Constitution is, what it says, what liberties it provides us with. The challenge is to America's principles. It goes through slavery, progressivism, fascism, communism, racism, and identity politics. And then the task, you'll see here, Section 5, the task of national renewal, the role of the family, teaching America, a scholarship of freedom, the American mind, and reference for the laws. So this document, when I found this PDF, I went and I printed off at my local Kinko's, FedEx, 10 copies of this and bound it. And I have read through this numerous times and highlighted it. But this amount of information is probably more than people that go to college and get an American history degree are taught, because it's been whitewashed out of our society and out of our culture. The hardest part we're going to have is forgetting all the lies and propaganda that we've been filled with and getting back to first principles.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Again, the common theme that runs through my head as I listen to our panel is great and much needed change is beginning and underway right now. And it'll be fascinating to have a front row seat as we do. Will, Barney, you care to weigh in on what we've covered thus far?
Yeah, there's a lot of good things that happened there. If you look at what occurred with the swearing in of Kevin Warsh, he was sworn in by Justice Clarence Thomas. If people recall, 18 months ago or so, President Trump posted a picture on Truth Social of the 9 Supreme Court justices, and Clarence Thomas's face was put onto everyone's body. And Trump posted this on Truth Social, and he said, "That's about right," as if he was the only true justice that was left remaining. And isn't it interesting that he was the one to administer the oath to Kevin Warsh? Kevin ended up being the 17th Federal Reserve Chairman. 17th. There's that number again, right? Is any of this clicking with anybody about the sequence of events here? This was planned out, and everything's being done by law. Nothing is being done by happenstance. Nothing is being done in a way that can ever be undone, because it's all being done according to law. And it is fascinating. Thank you, Kristy, for bringing this out, how we're using their own system against them. And we've seen this play out in numerous occasions. A good example of this is what happened with the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, over the last 17 months. The most outspoken member of Congress against the rogue CIA was John Ratcliffe. And President Trump puts him in as the head of the CIA. Suddenly he goes silent, and all their intelligence is now being used in all these operations taking place ever since January. Venezuela, Cuba. How did we know the 1,000+ targets to hit in Iran? Because the CIA had been integrated in that country for years. And now it's all being used against the cabal, their own system now being used against them. So we're watching what is some remarkable events going on here. I love what you guys said about the Constitution. I don't understand how you can take lawyers and judges that have all sworn allegiance to a foreign entity and declare that they can be the judges of the law of the land. That's an impossibility, because they haven't sworn an oath to the law of the land or to the Constitution. The military are the only ones that have done that. And various members in various positions of the government have done it also. But the legal system does not have to do that. And yet they stand there and claim that you need to have their certifications to walk through the gate of the bar. This is unbelievable what we're watching, and people are waking up to the truth of the matter, is that when we entered that bar, that gate, we walked into their jurisdiction and we were treated as the chattel they see us as, that it was all about money and what they could get from you. So you left the law of the land when you walked through those gates. I'm curious to see what we're going to do with our court system as all of this unfolds, and if we're going to rip out the bar and the gates and allow the law of the land to extend through the entirety of our courtrooms in the future. I do believe we're going to get back the 10 Commandments in the courtrooms and a variety of other things that are part of our founding. So we have a lot of work to do to reset our government. A good example that we've had recently of really government going rogue is everybody's been very disturbed about how nothing gets done in the Senate. Why isn't the Clarity Act being passed? Why isn't the Save America Act being passed? Why is the Senate stalling on all of this? So what do you see? You see a corrupted Senate. The whole world gets to watch this, see it on full display. If we went to our founding, we would realize the Senate was never an elected position. It wasn't established that way. The members of the Senate were simply appointments, representatives appointed by the state legislatures itself. If a senator was ever out of line, they were simply called home and someone was sent in their place. We need to get back to our founding so that we can restore the balance of power back to government so that it can become government by and for the people. And there's a lot of education that has to be done, not just with lawyers and judges and everything else, but there's education that has to be done with the people. When our country was founded, everybody wondered why we needed things like the women's suffrage movement so that women could vote. Women were always allowed to vote. The vote had nothing to do with male or female. It had to do with who owned the land. You had to be a landowner to vote. And the reason is because the dimensions of the property, whether it's a little quarter-acre lot with your house on it or 5,000 acres, it didn't matter. If you owned the land, you controlled the politics on your piece of land. This meant the people had political power to grant government. This is why it was power from the people. And we've lost that. And so that's why there's all this confusion going on, because we've forgotten our founding. We've forgotten where the power started from and why it was by and for the people. And so there's a whole education that needs to be done for everyone, not just those in the judicial system. Hope that helps.
Well, it certainly does. Brilliant, Will. Thank you very much. And I have to tell you, to our audience, folks, this broadcast is not only a history lesson, but brilliant analysis of the historical shift that's presently underway and all the challenges and work ahead of us to make it work. That's where we are. So do share this everywhere, because this is extremely important. And you mentioned about Radcliffe and the CIA. That was a good analogy to as using the system against them, that all those points to bomb, let's say, in Iran. Well, why did we had all the intel? I'm glad you brought that to the surface. I hadn't recognized that. And I think his name was Roy Moore, Judge Roy Moore. He'll be very thrilled to see the 10 Commandments coming back into our courtrooms. I can tell you that. I met the judge many, many years ago, back when the Tea Parties got started. And great and amazing change is underway. Kristy, you care to weigh in on this before I move us through some of the other elements of the script that I was reading?
Sure. I just want to thank Will Barney for bringing up Justice Thomas. I put out something that he just said the other day, that we don't get our rights by government. We get them from God. And our founders knew that, and they mentioned God 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. So Trump was asked right before he left his first 4 years, what was his most proud achievement? And he came right back instantly, and he said, I got over 300 constitutional judges I helped to get put in place. Now, 300 doesn't sound like very many, because we've got so much corruption in the judicial system, but it's very exciting to think that that was a good start. And, I could tell a lawyer joke right now about how lawyers just completely go away, but I won't. And then let's get to the fight. We've got this fight with basically a bunch of people leading up to two main fights, the lightweight and the heavyweight. And I was thinking about how this is what God gave me, because I thought, wow, on that day, Trump came out and said that he was making extremely great progress with ending the wars with Ukraine and Iran. And I just thought, from 1 year to June 14th, a year ago, and all of these changes have happened, I thought that was another one of those synchronicities that were worth mentioning. Those wars are now over,
Yes,
as I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the good points taken there. Sometimes it's hard for all of us, particularly those that have been, quote, awake and looking at least in the right places for information over these years. It's difficult for many of us to see the progress that has been made, and to recognize that each point has been specifically planned. And the term has been often used, and I'll use it again: military precision. This is an operation. This is a plan. Much of it has happened already. Some of it's yet to happen. Some of it's happening, but it is by no accident, without question. I'm going to continue to read this and see what our panel has to say about. While the national prayer of dedication was an essential step in establishing who the nation would place itself under, it was not the final legal trigger for America's new order. Again, under British Admiralty law, a shift of this magnitude still requires a visible public ritual that demonstrates the people's consent through participation and celebration. One of the oldest tools of the Admiralty system is now being used to secure that approval, ordo ab chao. UFC Freedom 250 provided exactly that public spectacle, a high visibility event on the White House lawn that fulfills the ritual requirement and completes the transition to the new American order. Ordo ab chao is the hidden motto of high-level Freemasonry. For those placed in positions of power under their god, Satan, whom they believe to be the true savior and illuminator, it is the blueprint for controlled transformation. Create chaos first, then offer a new order as the solution. It's the classic problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic. Pardon me. Their system is designed to engineer or exploit disruption through wars, financial crashes, moral collapse, social division, and fear. Once the people are terrified, confused, and desperate, the controllers step forward with their pre-planned, quote, solution, their new systems of governance, their rules, their gods. However, because humans were created as powerful sovereigns of the physical realm, these systems cannot be lawfully imposed without the acquiescence of the governed. Their operating philosophy is simple. Keep the masses ignorant, entertained, and emotionally invested in the spectacle, and they will unknowingly consent to the changes that follow. So to obtain that permission, they stage public spectacles of visible, controlled chaos. When people cheer and participate and become emotionally invested, their maritime law treats that participation as consent. According to their legal doctrine, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Once that consent is obtained, they can roll out the changes that follow. So UFC Freedom 250 is using this very same tool. That's what was just deployed, but this time against the enemy. The spectacle on the White House South Lawn is not directed against the American people. Instead, it was aimed at dismantling the British Admiralty system that has long exercised jurisdiction over this nation, as our panel has certainly brought to the surface for us here. Through public participation, the event secures visible support for the lawful transition, again, key word, lawful transition to the new American order under the law of the land. Instead of using their tool to further bind the American people to their system, it is being used to bring that system to an end. And that's what took place on the White House lawn. We'll stop there and go back to the top of the panel. Any feedback, comments, or thoughts that come to your mind? Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox.
I saw something the other day that was fascinating. There are 200 Masons in the Roman Catholic hierarchy. And the Roman Catholic hierarchy has controlled London, Washington, and the Vatican. And they've been involved in all kinds of nastiness, to include causing all our wars. So I look at that and I say, the Holy Roman Empire is still alive, because the Pope is Caesar and has been Caesar since the Catholic Church was founded. Interesting. The other thing I see is the UFC 250 was one of many things that are indicating the American people's being ready to be sovereigns. I'm holding up right here 3 golf balls, 250 years of America, freedom. The same woman that sent me that long, lengthy thing, she posted a picture of these golf balls. That signifies that the sovereign Americans who are supportive of what's going on really see the truth. Not everybody. And, I had a woman ask me last night, what about Iran? And she said, that was already solved before. And I never got to finish the conversation and say, the $1.7 billion that went to Iran ended up in a bank account in Switzerland. And the proof came in documents that were captured from Iran. And I didn't add that the CIA was leading most of that with the Mossad. But when we look at this freedom and sovereignty, I was thinking back, I met some people who said they had registered with the state as sovereigns. And I said to myself, okay, you registered with the state that you're a sovereign. That's with the government that may or may not be legal. And also, it gives people in the government the ability to track who you are. I've been a sovereign for a couple of 3 or 4 years. I carry a card that says I'm a sovereign, but I do not and will not register it with the government because the government is what we're trying to fix. Sovereignty is very important to people, just as their free will. I believe Donald Trump will issue his new revised Declaration of Independence that he wrote in when did he go to Mount Rushmore? He wrote this Declaration of Independence, and it really explains what it's about, what the Declaration of Independence says. I've had it for a couple of years, so I don't know when he did it, but I believe that the American people will get that on the 4th of July. I think we are changing the world for the better. And it's the world. It's not just the United States. That's the other piece that people miss a lot. 209 countries will go to gold-backed currency. When that happens, and QFS is in operation, you start a war, you lose all your assets. Interesting thought, isn't it?
It certainly is. And mhm.
So
Yeah, I
anyway,
agree with you. This is a course correction for all of humanity, and it begins right here at home, as one would
yeah,
expect, in God's land, God's country, the United States of America. And that's exactly the trajectory that we're on. We'll take care of business here, and we'll spread that throughout the world. We'll restore sound money. We'll restore free and fair elections, and bring God back to the surface, if you will. Captain Rob, any follow up or thoughts on what we've covered thus far?
Well, it's just brilliant. I'm honored to be a part of this panel. I love the insight and the derivative calm. What the walkaway message I believe should be from the UFC fight in the White House is the gatekeepers no longer control the narrative. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a strength and an authenticity, and there's an anti-establishment branding that comes with everything about President Trump, everything about MAGA, everything about people that want to be sovereign again, that want to revere God and return to a laws and principles in covenant with the creator of all of our rights. That's mocked and ridiculed, and it's deemed to be completely unacceptable by those gatekeepers of the narrative that for far too long, we have been told forever, since late 2017, through the Q operation, that this operation would be biblical. And it's not just biblical in scale, but I believe it's biblical in reality. One of those realities is the power of life and death flows through the tongue. You can speak truth or you can speak lies. You can divide and conquer, or you can respect the agency and the authority and the inalienable rights of my jurisdiction and everyone else's jurisdiction under a constitution of principles that were established by God, not a bunch of legalisms established by the crown. We cannot serve two masters. We serve a constitutional set of immutable, indestructible principles of self-governance, or we are assets on a balance sheet. We are human resources to be managed. We are chattel. We are property, and we have no liberty according to the maritime system. We are simply objects on a P&L, a profit and loss statement from the world reserve currency residency that's actually just an offshoot of the city of London, which is an offshoot of Rome. The Roman Empire fell, the Roman Catholic Church rose, and here comes up the river to the city of London. Here comes the Marxist. Here comes the central bankers, the Rothschild, the Bayer Rothschild family, which means red shield. Here comes centralized banking. To just bring this full circle, we had a religious institution open up their temple to allow the money changers to come in during Holy Week to screw people in the money exchange process while their operation was protected by the politicians. And as Jesus sat there on the hillside and watched the bankers and the politicians and the temple Pharisees work and collaborate together to steal and lie and destroy the wealth and extract from the people through dishonest weights and dishonest measures, he went down and flipped over the money changer tables, exposed the RICO operation, and 5 days later they hung him on a tree. Well, not a lot has changed at this point in time until President Trump came down the escalator. We had institutions controlling narratives for power and for control. We were destroyed by our lack of knowledge, and the power of life and death came through the media. It came through authorities. It came through the medical industry. It came through the pulpit. It came through academia. It came through social media. It came through every facet of narrative control possible, other than those that had a fidelity to the truth. And to me, the biblical component of what's happening to us, we have to understand that the justice system and the central banking system are conjoined twins. When you're changing money and property and title and transferring and doing swaps and derivatives and moving cash and capital in a system of who do I owe and who owes me, that's all the monetary system is a ledger of credits and debits. But behind that are contracts and laws and titles and ownership and transfer and paperwork and bookkeeping that is complex, but all of those rules operate under Admiralty law, not under common law. And so you can't have a central banking system without a central justice system. So when we get rid of the central banking system, we also have to get rid of that corrupt justice system that was born and financed by the very funders of the fake counterfeit central banking system that was then also governed by the narrative created out of thin air by this quote unquote Admiralty law justice system. We didn't have sound money and we did not have sound law. If we're going to go back to sound money, we have to also go back to sound law.
What a great, brilliant analysis. Folks, what we're doing here on this panel is we're making sense of the times. We're making sense of the gargantuan and positive transition, one could say from dark to light, or from Admiralty law into constitutional law, God's law. Thank you so much. And I'll throw this out there because it's very applicable right now. Nothing can stop what's happening, and nothing can stop what's coming. It's a freight train, and it's moving, and it will not be stopped. And it's an incredible time to be alive. I wish people would focus on. I know we have a lot of challenges. I know we're suffering financially and we're suffering physically and all that. Help is on the way. And but let's take a look and be grateful for the incredible accomplishments we have. And you mentioned President Donald Trump. Up until Donald Trump, there was no way out of this mess, at least not before anybody's eyes. I think everyone would agree with that. Nothing was moving in this proper direction until President Trump, the Q operation, and the great military took care of business and is taking care of business. Thank you very much. Will, Barney?
Well, it's fascinating this discussion and what we're talking about here, because really, if you look at the consent of the governed and power of and by for the people, we've got a ways to go, but we're getting there. I think we're walking through a series of events that's helping us restore this sense of sovereignty. You know, no one disclosed to a mother in a hospital that if she signed that birth certificate, she signed her child away to servitude, to someone's, unbeknownst to her, trust account where the child's life would be traded for the rest of their life, making millions off of them. No mother knew this. There wasn't open disclosure. Can you have a proper consent if there's no disclosure? So the fraud has been foisted upon everyone across the world in many ways, getting people to surrender constitutional rights to travel to be replaced by a driver's license, which affords you certain benefits, let's say, but they can revoke them whenever they want. All of these things were part of the travesty of what was done. And all of this was done in slowly, seemingly imperceptible ways. And so we have a population now generally that has all been born and raised in captivity. And they don't even realize or understand what freedom means. It's not too different than the children of Israel who were bondage to Egypt for 400 years, and Moses comes along to free them, and they can't even understand the freedom they're offered. And we're going to have a little bit of this going on as people learn to understand what it means to be in place, and the proper term is probably overstand these kind of idiots, because when you go into the courtroom, that's the first thing they say. They'll read you a list of things and they'll say, do you understand? In other words, do you stand under our law? And as sovereign beings, we do not stand under their law. We stand over their law because we are the law of the land, and they have tried to bring us into the law of the sea. So you have all these things going on that have taken, it seems like, imperceptibly adjustments over many years to get us to where we are. And, I've had some people in the community of those that call themselves awake and are looking for revaluation of currencies and everything say things like, why is this taking so long? I'm like, you don't understand. We're moving at warp speed. What are you talking about? Takes so long. If you realize how far away we were from our actual sovereign constitutional republic, you would look at the progress we made, particularly since Trump's been back in office since January 25, and you'd go, wow, that's amazing what you could accomplish in that short period of time. You know, my ancestors first came to this nation in 1630, 10 years after the Mayflower, and they fought in every battle, every war since. There's a history of our family fighting for freedom. And it is incredible to me that as we look at our heritage, and not everybody's family's been in this country that long, but as we look back over the last period of time, you know, now coming up on almost 400 years, it is amazing what we have had to do as people. And every time we've lost freedom anywhere in the world historically, it has always cost blood to win it back. This war isn't any different, but the strategies employed by Trump and the Patriots and the Q team and everybody involved in this has taken a little longer than people wanted. But what has that longer path done? It has saved the bloodshed. That's what it's done. We would have been in civil war already if we had moved this faster. It had to move at the speed of the awakening so that we weren't fighting each other, that we could see and perceive the enemy of who it really is. Because the enemy for hundreds of years has deployed this same strategic plan, divide and conquer. Get everybody fighting with each other, then they won't see who the real enemy is, who's controlling the whole thing. And this has been going on and on and on. When you look at all these, like Iran, we're not over there fighting with the Iranian people. We're fighting against City of London bankers who have been financing the people that are running that country, who have no allegiance to the country itself. So this is what's interesting is you look at the kinetic war activities of 2026, is they've been designed to go after the real enemy, the invisible enemy. Remember, Trump always talked about the invisible enemy in 2020, and everybody thought he was talking about some virus. He wasn't talking about a virus. He was talking about the people behind the virus, the ones responsible for it. And now we have Tulsi Gabbard dropping all kinds of stuff. Last Friday, she dropped all the information about the gain of function going on by Dr. Fauci. And who is Dr. Fauci? Oh, Trump put him up in front of the camera for everybody to see all throughout 2020. Everybody get to know this guy. Why was he doing that? He was doing that because he wanted us to see and understand these people. Why do you think Tim Walz was put out as a running mate to Kamala Harris? They wanted everybody to see who Tim Walz was before the big reveal of the massive amounts of fraud that he's been involved in. Donald Trump is employing a strategy here that is genius. I don't think we've ever seen any political figure in history that has been so careful in planning as to make his enemies on every front come out to the light of day, noonday on Sunday, and show everybody who they are. Yet he has this incredible gift to do just that. And they get angry and they get upset because he calls them out, but then everybody gets to see who and what they are. The drops that you're going to see coming from DNI, and Tulsi Gabbard's only just begun. She's out now. Now we've got Bill Pulte taking over as the National Defense Intelligence, Department of National Intelligence. But what's interesting about this is we look at the information. Trump said, Pulte's a good guy. I think he wants to let out some information about the vote fraud. Yes, he does. And he's taken Tulsi Gabbard out of the way, out of the line of fire. And he's going to allow Bill Pulte to come in and acting DNI. And acting DNIs, guess what? They don't have to be approved by Congress. You don't have to go through all this formal process with a rotten Senate that won't approve you. You can put the acting person in there and they can get the job done, and watch what happens from here. If we thought the storm was raging, we're only beginning. It's going to really rage. What do you do with a country when you find out that almost everybody in political leadership was installed and not voted there? What's going to happen in the streets? How do the people respond to that when they realize it's all been a fabrication? What's going to happen when all of the conversations that have been going on for months now with Nicolas Maduro start coming to light? Because he knows all of the people in all the 71 nations plus the United States where their government was stolen, who all was involved, and everybody that did it. It's all about to pour out, and it's going to get a little dicey because some people are going to have a hard time. Those of you that are watching this are probably the awakened primarily, but you're going to have friends and neighbors that are going to get shook. They're really going to get shook by this, and they need to be shook because now we're past the time of the easy awakening, the gentle awakening. Now we're entering the water in your face awakening, and that is needed if we're going to finish this. And the military has determined it's marching forward through a sequence and series of events, and it cannot be stopped. They will not stop. They're marching all the way to the end of this. I thank our men and women in uniform who have taken the oath and who are leading the charge in this, and our commander-in-chief at the helm. They try to kill him every other day. We need to pray for his safety because we are witnessing something that will never be witnessed again. This doesn't affect, 400 people in a country called Egypt. This time around, this affects the entirety of the world. There's nothing more consequential other than probably the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the great flood that affects the whole world like this. You're witnessing it. You're watching it. Be grateful you live now. You live in a time when your eyes get to see and behold the great deliverance of this world. I am certainly grateful to be there and to be a part of this panel. Thank you, John, for inviting me to be with such incredible, intelligent people on this panel. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Will Barney. You unpacked so much there and so many truths and metaphors. I can't thank you enough. Incredible and from your heart. Folks, one of the things to pedal back, we were born and raised in captivity and had no idea what even freedom was. Powerful statement. And I want to also pedal back to some of the points you brought to the surface, Will, that made me write this note down, that this is precision military operation with our commander-in-chief, the Q team, etc., and the great military 10 steps ahead all the way through it. So thank you very much. Any inspiration, any comments, any feedback from Kristy Allen on what you've been listening to off the heels of our panel?
Well, I love what Will said about how we're getting it in our face now. And I had an in-my-face moment with David Clements at the Fraud Fighter Summit. He stood up. Well, first of all, I got to tell you, I met him and I got to go up to him. Nobody was around him, and I just got to chat with him. And I said, does anybody accuse you of being a time traveler? And he smiled, a big smile, and he said, all the time. But anyway, he brought something home for me, and that was that the Save America Act does not have to be passed. Now, that shocked me. I'm sitting, because the media is, is Congress going to do their job and do this? Well, everybody's getting kind of discouraged because, Congress, of course, is dragging their feet on this. But he pointed out that non-citizen voting has already been a federal crime since 1996. And so all of these executive orders that Trump has put into place, we've already got a Save America Act. It's already done. So that was my little splash in the face that I got to get. And I'm going to be doing the particulars on this in an upcoming podcast. I was so excited to learn all that I gathered at the Fraud Fighters Summit, which you allowed me to go to. Thank you, John. It was so awesome.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your life schedule and being there. I'm sure it was very inspirational. Some powerful patriots there, and of course our good friend Juan O'Savin and retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck. I'm going to continue reading here, folks. Maybe I'll be two more segments of reading, and then we're going to conclude the broadcast with a few interesting things. We'll just have some fun with and get your comments on. But I'm going to go back to reading this. The symbolism of UFC Freedom 250, again, is the dramatic spectacle. It's classic Ordo ab Chao, a highly visible event placed on the White House South Lawn, the center of American power. The two main events, the lightweight title and the heavyweight title. A co-main heavyweight interim title, Alex Pereira and the French gentleman, two foreign fighters, while the heavyweight division represented the foreign established powers battling for control. The lightweight division represented the common people. An American fighter in the main event on sovereign land symbolizes the American people entering the final stage of the conflict on their own ground. So the octagon cage where the fights take place, again, sat on the South Lawn, sovereign American land, not corporate territory. This is the same ground where the king and queen stood as legal witnesses only weeks earlier. A fight inside the cage becomes the perfect public ritual, visible emotional chaos that the crowd can cheer for. In this symbolic battle, the American crowd's loud support of the fighters goes far beyond enthusiasm. By pouring their energy into the American fighter on sovereign American soil, the people, whether aware or not, are symbolically choosing the new land-based American order over the foreign maritime system. Fascinating stuff that took place, unbeknownst to, sadly, most people. Their cheers act as acquiescence, the people's approval of the transition and acceptance of the storm that accompanies it. That consent makes the shift out of the old system lawful. The remaining events related to America's restored sovereignty. Several key events still remain in the process of restoring American sovereignty and completing the transition of the law of the to the law of the land. So UFC Freedom 250, again on Flag Day, June 14th, 2026, exactly 1 year after 14th, 2025, when the legal process of removing admiralty or maritime law and restoring the law of the land began publicly. The American people delivered their loud consent through Ordo ab Chao on sovereign land. This allowed for the transition that introduced the new system to the people. That fast forwards to the G7. Trump walks in, had all this behind us recently, and what does he say? I am the boss. Well, make no mistake about it. He certainly is. At the G7 meetings, June 15th to the 17th, just a few days ago, immediately afterward, President Trump will present the American people the newly accepted new order, including the storm that follows, to the G7 leaders. These leaders represent the main powers of that old system. In their legal and ritual rulebook, a major international system cannot be dissolved in private. Trump's presence delivers formal, in-person notice that America is exiting the old Admiralty system and activating the new land-based system. Again, I am the boss. This forces their acknowledgement and prevents any future legal or ritual challenge. Now let's fast forward, June 24th. That's today for me, tomorrow for you folks, and when you're listening to this, it will already have been yesterday. But Trump's rally to end all rallies, June 24th, 2026. Nice birthday gift for me. Thank you, sir. This serves as a victory lap that publicly celebrates the people's consent after formal notice has been given. Military bans emphasize land-based authority, reinforcing the shift from maritime law to the land of power. And to those that say, there is no plan, BS, there is a plan, and you are watching it unfold. The performance of Nessun Dorma, None Shall Sleep, the famous dramatic aria from the Sum of All Fears film, was of course played during the mass execution of traitors and deep state figures. With the people's permission now granted for the necessary storm, the old system's protectors shall sleep no more. As justice proceeds and their protections are removed. The Great American State Fair, June 25th, 2026 to July 10th, a massive, joyous celebration stretching from the Capitol to the Washington Monument. Through exhibits, pavilions, performances, and family events, the nation will publicly rejoice in the people's consent to end the old system, restore the law of the land, and return the nation to God's jurisdiction. Again, the beginning of America's golden age. Independence Day, 250th anniversary, coming very soon, July 4th. July 4th, 1776, marked America's public declaration of independence from British rule and its placement under God's jurisdiction on the land. Now, that independence was later, as we know, quietly reversed through the 1871 Municipal Corporation of D.C., which is no longer, placing the nation back under British Admiralty law. Well, on the 250th anniversary, America completes the lawful process of reversing that quiet reversal of 1871. This is not merely a celebration. It marks the symbolic and legal completion of the return to the original 1776 covenant and the full restoration of the law of the land, again under God's jurisdiction. The storm, I just want to interject here, not from the script, but my interjection. You know, those that follow our work know that most of my guests, not all but most, are military, intelligence, and economic experts. And all the military folks, from brigadier generals to lieutenant colonels and everything in between, have all stated, including Juan O'Savin, that we're not finished. Juan used the analogy of a Category 6 storm, stating we're in the Category 2 phase and we're witnessing the outer bands. But that concentrated eye of that Cat 6 is yet to hit, folks. Pray, plan, and prepare. But the storm, the public ceremony, is only the beginning. What follows is the storm. Some may question how it can be right to move forward without the people's full knowledge of these events. Why not simply tell everyone the truth? Well, Will commented on that before. Americans already know what they need to know. They understand that the system is broken and corruption is rampant. What they don't understand is that their permission must still be obtained through the rituals of the very Admiralty law system most, again, are unaware even exists. So rather than trying to educate the entire nation on that hidden system, which many would dismiss as conspiracy theory or outright impossible, the president is using the enemy's own rules against it for the benefit of the people he has been elected to serve, and serving the people he is, and at great cost to him and his family's life. The storm begins when the existing system starts losing its legal and economic control. We're there now. Yet that storm is more than their resistance. It is the process by which the new system displaces the old one. Those who, those who built their wealth, their influence and power within the existing structure will suddenly find that the protections they relied upon are no longer there. And again, the exit ramps are closed. Trapped. We got you. Corruption will be exposed. Long protected bad actors will face, some already have, accountability, and the legal, financial, and institutional foundations of the old system will be dismantled and replaced with the new American order. I'll read a bit more and have our panel weigh in. This is the true meaning of ordo ab chao. The difference is that it's not being used again to enslave the people. It's being used to dismantle the very structure that enslaved them. So UFS Freedom 250 was therefore more than a sporting event. It served as a symbolic moment when the people give their approval to that transition and to the storm that accompanies it. Though intense, the storm will be swift, as the enemy's moves have already been anticipated in order to minimize its effect. And on a kinetic level, this is why we have 1 million National Guard and Army reserves deployed in every state and ready for whatever may be coming our way. This is not only for the benefits of the American people and economy, but for the world as a whole, as the consequences of such a transition will be felt far beyond America's borders. What follows is the dawning of a new era. America will begin healing in unity under the law of the land, restored to its rightful place under God's jurisdiction. Other nations will soon follow. This is order out of chaos, but for a free people under God. That concludes the script, if you will, provided to me from Colonel Lennox. And now we'll have the panel briefly weigh in on the conclusion of that. And then I want to close out talking about our friend Michael Yvonne Robinson and Tulsi Gabbard and what July 5th through midterms, which will be suspended according to 107. We'll touch on these things as we close out, but we'll go back to the top of the panel. Colonel Lennox, sir, any closing comments on the UFC 250 Freedom event as this panel has so brilliantly analyzed each and every one of you, and I thank you all very much. Your comments, sir.
One of the things I thought about, well, and I can't remember who it was, said something, was the Khazarians. One of the reasons the Senate will not pass the law is the number of two passport senators who have passports with Israel and the United States. Israel is, of course, the Khazarian headquarters. It also does not have an extradition treaty with anybody. So those senators feel like they're protected as long as they have that second passport, because they'll just fly off to Israel. And that's probably why they keep saying Israel is last. So I think about the Khazarians, and I think about the closure of all the portals. And you're going to get to that when you have the alien session. But the portals are critical to the Khazarians, because if they don't have the portals, they can't get off the earth. And if you have a portal that you came in on, you have to leave on it. The other thing we talked about briefly was the war in Iran and the war in Ukraine. It's my understanding that Putin has agreed with Trump on the end of the war, and that we are shipping huge amounts of mining equipment to Ukraine to dig up the rare earth minerals, so we're not dependent on China for those rare earth minerals. And that in exchange, Putin gets to keep Crimea and some of the other areas that are heavily Russian. Those are a couple of things, and I had a bunch of other things that I was going to talk about, but I think the most important thing for the people to remember is that when we go to the law of the land or common law or whatever you want to call it, and we get off of the maritime law, when you walk into that court, if you walk in there and you're trying a case, there's two things you have to do. Make sure that the judge and the prosecuting attorney have an oath of office that complies with the United States Constitution. I will guarantee you that they don't. If they do, it'll be a miracle. The other thing is to understand that that lawyer that you hired for your divorce or whatever it is not a U.S. citizen. He is a British, he signed an oath of office to Britain. And if he says, well, I'm in the International Bar Association, then he signed an oath of office to the Vatican, who created the International Bar Association in the 1500s. So either way, he's legally not entitled to try a case in the United States after the 4th of July. And that's important. I mentioned this to a friend of mine whose friend is going through a divorce, and he said, all they'll do is give her a hard time and give me a hard time if I bring that up. I said, 5th of July, if you bring that up, they lose. So my summary really is about the legal side. The financial side, once QFS is fully operational, if you're a criminal and you try to do something in QFS, all your money disappears. All of it. If you're a country and you try to start a war, all your assets disappear. And we have also gone to, if I have an ounce of gold and you have an ounce of gold, we'll trade together. 1 ounce for 1 ounce. No more of this stuff I used to teach in finance years ago, where you had to calculate where the best place to locate your plant was based on 4 or 5 different factors. There's one factor. What is the gold balance between the two? And the taxes aren't going to matter. I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom. You have quite a bit more to say, and one day, if you afford me the time, we'll sit down, just you and I, and you can submit the script to the show, and let's take things where you want to take it. I appreciate everything you've brought to the surface in this broadcast, and I want to pedal back. You mentioned the aliens. Yes, the show that I launched is Off World with JMC. We had our premiere episode with Alex Collier and retired Delta Force's Chuck Sellers. I know you know Chuck. That was our premiere broadcast, which was very well reviewed. I'm very happy about that. Sure, a few people ruffled a few feathers, and I understand that. I'm bringing on either a very well-respected pastor and or a very well-respected bishop we're in the process of working on right now for the second episode to come in for 10 minutes and address some of the concerns that folks in the religious community are having with the subject matter of off-world entities. But Sir Tom, we'd love to have you join Alex Collier and myself on future episode, and our producers will be reaching out to you if you'd be obliged to join us. It's an important subject. There's a reason the president has released 3 tranches thus far. There's a reason mainstream news like Jesse Waters and others at Fox and other places are covering it. Nothing can stop what's coming, folks, and it's part of the plan. It's not just a distraction. In fact, Podesta and Hillary, she said to him, should we use the alien card? Some years back. Is it time to use the alien card that would have been used against us? Instead, the president, in my opinion, moved that agenda forward by usurping that and releasing the files in truth and transparency. And I think there's a lot more to come. And you've spoken a lot, Tom, about portals and the president and so forth. I can't wait to have you join Alex Collier and I on that show. We're moving through the panel as we're wrapping up the show. Captain Rob, any concluding comments on UFC 250 and the subject we've been discussing for nearly 2 hours now?
I just think, it's not a coincidence that we're seeing a shift in narrative, the decentralization of traditional institutions back to we the people. We're seeing we're seeing the unconventional nature of a President Trump and the violent, if you will, or unhinged opposition to a man that does not adhere to groupthink, does not do the George Orwell 1984 program speak by the intelligentsia that have programmed us since the doctor slapped us on the rear end. It's such an amazing exposure operation for those that have the eyes to see and the discernment to pay attention to the unhealthy imbalance of when truth and common sense is spoken and other people's heads spin around and green vomit comes out of their mouth. I mean, the greatest exposure operation in the world is to just let people show themselves as violent opponents to truth and common sense. I mean, you don't even need a trial. You just need eyes to see. And this process, we've seen it through COVID. We've seen it through this mass extermination campaign where you had the masters of the universe literally trying to get closer to the Georgia Guidestones and get civilization down to a manageable 500 million people and call it science and monetize their way to creating 100 brand new billionaires while they get rid of half the population. I mean, it is so obvious for those that have the courage to open their eyes and see there are principalities of darkness in this world. And just because no one told us or they didn't publish it in a book and the preacher didn't wake us up in the pulpit to tell us how bad it is and how close we came to losing it all, doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that the vast majority of humanity was put into a coma. And the Great Awakening is the Great Awakening. I'm just blessed to be on a panel with like-minded souls and soldiers with heart and soul and courage to have spent the time, take the slings and arrows, put their face out in public, do everything they possibly can to serve their fellow men and men and women we will never meet. If we can serve to wake people up so that my kids and grandkids can live in a better world, there's no higher calling. And I just want to thank you for your leadership, John, in bringing people like this panel together. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Without the panel, my work doesn't exist. But, where we go when we go all really means something. And thank you very much, Captain Rob. Your closing comments on the subject at hand, Will Barney.
Oh, we're in the midst of some incredible events. Just this morning, Donald Trump signed another executive order on quantum technology,
Yes.
Specifically talking about quantum computing. And of course, he established a quantum.gov during his first term. And this is all part of that. In his address to the nation when he was holding his inauguration in January of 2017, he mentioned thousands of patents that have been held back and needed to be released to the people. The events we're seeing, like the signing of the executive order today, are about bringing that kind of technology forward. The release of the UFO files and all of this is about opening people's minds to get them ready for what's coming, for the technology that's going to transform their lives. It's going to make it easier. It's going to make it better. And in many ways, we've suffered long and hard for many years and decades. And he's trying to really ease some of that pain with the release of this technology. And there's a lot more to come with that, but you can see him laying the groundwork for all that to take place. If you look at Space Force, he created Space Force in his first term. And we have a lot of disclosure coming out on, they're calling it the UFO disclosure, but there's been black ops projects going on for decades. What about the last 80 years of black ops projects where they've been playing with this technology? I think having, a military installation like Space Force gives you a great excuse to slap their name on a craft and say, look what Space Force did, and it be acceptable to the people. We talk about the new financial system being quantum, right? This is where it is pretty much self-regulating. It's trustless. Every person that goes into a contract is verified instantly. You don't have to wonder if they can pay you. You don't have to wonder if they have the token that you want to pay for. All of it is instantly available. And this technology is making all of that happen, where we can instantaneously move money around the world. All this was necessary. Our company is all about projects. We're about humanitarian projects. We got a lot of work to do to rebuild the world, to get it back where it needs to be. We're short 1 billion homes across this planet. There's a lot of room for improvement, but it would have been impossible to do all these projects, to move money where it needed to go under this current control grid of the cabal. It would have never happened. If they didn't control the money, they would have controlled you through regulation. It wouldn't have allowed us to build heaven on earth, because that's not what they wanted. They wanted us to keep their hell cycle running. So we are watching now the fulfillment of what has been years and years in the making. Decades actually have led to this very moment. And if it wasn't for all the sacrifice of so many people in so many years ahead, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I know we're going to be talking more about financial system and crypto and blockchain and everything in the future. This is going to be a lot of discussion about this, because everybody's learning about what this new technology does and how it helps us. And we should talk about it, because it's going to allow us to move value between each other readily, easily, with very little friction. And it's going to change, really transform the speed and efficiency of the way we interact with each other around the world. And I think this is so incredible when you think about those possibilities, and from where we were in this control grid, and now we're walking through the steps of freedom. Tom talked about what could potentially take place on the 4th of July. I agree with him. I think there could be the reading of the new Declaration of Independence. Trump announced on July 4th, 2020, while we were still reeling with the COVID stuff, after he had come back from Mount Rushmore, that he had signed the Declaration of Independence. Well, we haven't seen that document just put out to the world yet, but will we see it on the 4th of July? I think is a very good chance that we see that declared on the 4th of July. And from that point forward, a series of events that have already been planned and staged to fulfill the complete restoration of our nation. And so wonderful. We live in amazing times, and we are blessed of all people to witness this kind of liberation from this control grid of the world. And I'm so excited to be here, to be a part of this, to be with this great panel of people who are intelligent, knowledgeable, and are sharing the light with the world. Thank you, each of you, for that.
Thank you again. So well said. And we're moving from deliberate, controlled, tyrannical scarcity of the basic necessities of life and living into a world of freedom and abundance as God intended. This is our great shift from dark to light, and that's what we are in the middle of. And you're right, Will. It's a great time for all of us to be here during this time of history, leading to the dawning of the golden age. Kristy, your closing comments before we do a couple of quick drive-by things and wrap up the broadcast. Your closing views of the important subjects we've addressed in the last 2 hours.
Wow. What an honor to be on this little group panel. This is a first for me, as you know, John, so it's kind of exciting. I loved how you brought up something that I'm excited about, which is the quantum stuff. We're going to have a new quantum monetary system. We've got med beds coming. We literally have the resurrection of the human race to look forward to. And it's amazing who is so against Trump that they wouldn't want us all to feel better and, go toward life instead of death. But we are talking about a death cult. And what this movie has done is shown us very clearly who was who in this zoo. And so we're going toward a golden age. Trump has just insisted on it. And everybody's who's, worry warts and worried about this and that and the other. The military has got this. They've got our backs. And I really do trust the plan. And I loved Louis Herm's message to the Fraud Fighter Summit. He said, yes, trust the plan. But remember, the plan was always you. So we get to step up and we get to cherish this country. We get to cherish our vote. We get to cherish our health. We are going toward a quantum everything. And we're going to learn a lot over the next little while. It might be rough because when the light turns on, and if you're not used to processing it and you haven't been doing it for years, just, your circuits are going to fry. So drink lots of water. A lot's going to go through you. So just, take care of yourself. So thanks again, John, for inviting me on this panel.
Thank you for being here. And you raised some great closing points there. What this operation in part has done is it's shown everyone who's who in the zoo. I like that. And that's that pretty much summarizes it. And also, you talked about the plan has always been us. Absolutely. Folks, I've always said this. I said this back on the Clay Clark, General Flynn Reawaken Tour stage when I was a platform speaker over those years. The pecking order of command and control, in my humble opinion, is God, Trump, Q, the military white hats, and we, the people, to Kristy's point. Thank you all very much. Very quickly, folks, just some drive-by things I like to address, lighten it up a bit, but also of some level of significance. And we'll be brief on these things and we'll wrap up the broadcast. Michael LaVaughn Robinson, also known as Michelle Obama, who has a book recently in the last couple of years titled Becoming Michelle. I would say that I realize we're down to the National Enquirer, where we just spent most of the time in the New Yorker magazine, to use metaphors. But the reason I'm raising this is because I don't think it was an accident that fighter at the very end grabbed the microphone and said, I think I'm quoting, or darn near close to quote, "Michelle Obama is a man, am I right, America?" Well, fascinating, huh? Now, that's a wake-up call to many, many millions, and a chuckle for the rest of us. But why am I mentioning it? Not for gutter politics talk or conspiratorial things or defaming Michelle. I'm mentioning it because if, in fact, it is true, we were lied to by the president and the first lady. We were deceived. And the world needs to know if that is accurate or not. Now, listen, I can run a segment on that, and I'm not going to. We've seen the Ellen DeGeneres dance, Bruno Mars song. We've seen something that's gone less viral when Michelle Obama was coming out of what looked like a brownstone, either in D.C. or New York or something, running into a limo it's perceived in the morning, kind of not showered and ready for the day yet, in sweatpants. And it was quite evident what you saw in Ellen DeGeneres show you also saw on that run to the limousine. We've seen a lot of coverage on this. When Barack Obama, Barry Soetoro himself, and these clips are still out there if you want to dig around on YouTube, folks, where he calls his wife Michael. Me and Michael. Okay, he's done that more than once, and also on an outdoor ceremony to dignitaries and leaders all over the world, as well as in closed-door interviews. It's all out there, folks. You can ignore it if you choose. All we're raising is the question, is Michael LaVaughn Robinson Michelle Obama? And why is that important? Because, again, I wouldn't say treason in the truest sense of treason. We've got plenty of that going on all over the place in other areas, like husband Barack and Russiagate. Thank you, Tulsi. But let me pipe down here. Quick comments on Big Mike. Anywhere you want to go, Colonel Tom Lennox.
Well, Big Mike's mother died, and that was also Michelle Obama's mother. And she left everything to Michael Robinson.
There you have it.
That's
Thank you.
my.
Well said. Captain Rob, any comments on Michelle Obama, Michael Yvonne Robinson narrative?
At a minimum, for 24 to 48 hours after that comment was made, the number one trending tag on social media was Michael Obama. You know, the whole topic. So how many people for the first time ever were introduced to the very idea? As many people that want to be repugnant or act, clutch their pearls, and the media want to disparage everybody. The gatekeepers had never put any of this stuff out. So unless you were wide awake and paying attention, that was your first introduction to what the hell did that guy just say? And if they're lying to me about this and they lied to us about COVID, what will they not lie to us about? So at an absolute minimum, that's one heck of a way to stir the pot.
You bet. And I got 30-second comment. We'll go to Will. One would think that a person that held. One moment. One would think that a person that held such a prestigious position as First Lady, that a fighter like that would make such a defamatory statement before the largest world audience. One would assume that they would sue for defamation of character and would have grounds to have their case heard. We haven't seen that. Why? Because in a lawsuit becomes what shows up? Discovery. And I don't think they would like what they would discover. Therefore, no lawsuit. Will, Barney, your comments on Big Mike and Michael Yvonne Robinson.
Talk about the ultimate bread and circus. This was really, it was interesting. First of all, we had a fake president. He wasn't even a natural born citizen. And at the same time, had a fake first lady, or shall we say first gentleman. And isn't it something that this is now being revealed to the people? Of course, all of us here probably knew this years ago. But isn't it amazing how it's being revealed to the people, how fake they are? You see, everything that these godless people are about, it's all deceit. It's all sleight of hand. Everything is fake. There's nothing real. And yet God stands upon the rock. He is the rock. Everything is real. Right? And so this is, I think, a lesson for the world. That we have entrusted ourselves to people who are utterly fake. What else is fake? Well, I'll tell you what's fake. The fact that there is no abundance. That's fake too. They manufactured it. They manufactured lack. There's no lack in this world. Everything was manufactured. And so I think this is wonderful. I think it's great that, we laugh about it a little bit, and we've seen the videos are pretty obvious. But nevertheless, it is a lesson for the world as well, saying, we should not build ourselves upon the godless, because that's a foundation that, as we've seen, is erodible.
We got to mention Joan Rivers. The reporter asked her as she was running up the steps to something, Joan, do you think we'll ever have a gay president? Oh, we already have that in Obama. It's okay. It's okay. And then, and Michelle's a tranny. Everybody knows that. And 2 weeks later, a simple procedure for a relatively healthy, I think she was 80-year-old, ended up under very mysterious conditions, if one did the homework, dead. But I'll rest in peace, Joan. Your comments, Kristy Allen, on Big Mike.
Well, it's just amazing how many people you'd think that everybody would know by now. But I look at patterns, and this has been going on for a long time in America. I don't want to name the president's wives, but, All you have to do is kind of look at
Really?
each one of them and, put some pieces together, and it's pretty obvious. Um, w- it's Baphomet. It's their religion. They believe in this. They've got glorification centers. They were going to, turn off all of our, make the men women and women men, and so that they could worship their Baphomet. And it's just, the fact that we have had to be handheld and walked through this and really seen how bad it was, because most people don't know, but I've got family members. I go to their, and they're still saying how great of a president Obama was, and this, that, and the other. And I'm just, I just don't even know where to start. And some people are just so far behind on this. I really do pray for their circuits that they're going to be able to handle it, because we've been living under some really yucky stuff for a long time, and it's what they did to the kids. It's terrible, and we're being shown this, and I just want to make this point. We're being shown this so that we will stand up and never put up with this stuff again. That's it.
Absolutely, thank you. And that bucket of cold water is coming to the face that we'll talked about before to a lot of people. And this is where the EBS, when it's launched, in my humble opinion, will wake up all those that think Obama was a good president, and George Bush was a good guy, and Dick Cheney was a wonderful person, and so forth, and John McCain was a hero. All that stuff will, the truths will be seen. I want to say one more thing about Big Mike, and we'll wrap this up. And it's simply this. I came across a post in 2019 on Twitter. It was Michelle Obama's Twitter page. I'm paraphrasing it. I don't have it in front of me, but I have it in my computer. And it was an exchange between President Trump, 2019, at Donald Trump, and Michelle Obama. And it was about, do you want to, President responded in the Twitter tweet that, would you like to shoot some hoops, Big Mike? Would you like to play basketball, Big Mike? And then you can invite Barack if you choose. Now, I find that fascinating way back then, and noteworthy to the discussion. But, in closing here, just very quickly, maybe 2 minutes each of us, if that. Tulsi Gabbard, I think it was Will or Captain Rob that invoked Tulsi earlier. She did exactly what we anticipated, pulled a few hand grenade pins on the way out the door. I believe between July 5th and the midterms, which according to Juan, and we'll see how it plays out, will be suspended for a period of time till we're ready to vote properly. But what we're going to see, in my opinion, as a result of the hand grenades that were just set off, these are no longer, as far as I understand, and anyone on this panel can correct me, these are no longer ongoing investigations, which we're not able to speak about because it's an ongoing investigation. They're not ongoing investigations. They are concluded. They've been released, and we're talking about the election theft of Russiagate from all roads leading up to Obama. We're talking about Fauci, Gates, NIH, CDC, World Health Organization, and all of those people that did, you know what they did, the pandemic. That's been released, and the biolabs. I think these will be among the biggest stories between now and the conclusion of this year, because now it's time for justice, and it's going to start to creep up and happen. Thus, the category 6, and we're only at stage 2, because their time is up. They're at the precipice. It's their 11th hour. The exit ramps are closed, and we're taking them down to Chinatown, as Robert De Niro once said in the movie. We should take him down to Chinatown while we're taking people down to Chinatown. But having said that, closing comments about the hand grenades of Tulsi Gabbard and what the rest of this year might look like concerning that, Colonel Lennox.
I believe that the number of people who have been executed and the number of existing 700,000, 200,000, who knows, sealed indictments, that one of the things the people who have said, well, nobody's getting arrested, they'll suddenly see on the media, people being hung that they did not think anything was happening to. They'll see the Clintons, they'll see the Bushes, they'll see all the people the flags were wrinkled on their coffins when they were going through their death. They'll see Cheney. They'll see Sotomayor saying, Barack's going to save me. All of that is going to come out. And it's going to be, for a lot of people, it's going to be really, really hard. That's my thoughts on that.
Yes, we have to help those. Now, the lunatics and the crazies, forget
Yeah.
about them. God will deal with them later. But everybody else, red or blue, whatever category that we separate ourselves into, we need to help these people, and we will. Gitmo, I want to comment on that, Tom. Sure.
Yeah. The 383 congressmen and senators that Lloyd Brunson went after in the Supreme Court, people are going to go absolutely ballistic when those 383 it's revealed they've been arrested. And I believe they were arrested years ago. My last on that.
Well, thank you. We go back to Julian Assange talking about, I think he said 95 or 98%, when all is said and done, will be gone, to your point, sir. And that brings me to retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, Juan's chief of staff, one of the guys that really made the event Fraud Fighter Summit tick the way it did. Is he was in Gitmo, stationed there after 9/11 events. I think it was in 04, as reported by Matt. I think he oversaw and was part of some of the 9/11 combatants in the military tribunals. But he also had his hand in setting up the construction for what is about to be released, and that is the media center out of Guantanamo Bay that Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox is talking about when the world starts to see. We're going to see things, in my opinion, two ways. When the EBS is launched, which will be for lots of different purposes, and then when we start reporting live from Gitmo. That's coming. I can't wait. I'm patient because I trust the plan. It's God's timing, and it's Trump and the military white hats. Again, precision military planning. So, folks, people have been saying to me, oh, my popcorn's run out. I'm tired of waiting. Hey, you remember the movie Jaws, Get a Bigger Boat? Get a bigger bucket because you've got more popcorn to come. So I would like to go through the panel, wrap us up. Captain Rob, Tulsi's hand grenades. What's it all looking like between now and then?
Well, you know what? What's fascinating to me and what brings me hope and joy is that here we have a female, a decorated lieutenant colonel in the Army, and a Democrat who has provided information to the world. And, if we could just help the average person, people have to work and exert an extreme amount of effort to keep their mind closed and not listen to what's going on. But what Tulsi Gabbard just shared with the world, with documented proof, evidence of the COVID betrayal. Let's put this in context. It's far larger than the Tuskegee experiment. That was a targeting of black military soldiers who used them as guinea pigs. It was larger than Chernobyl and all the death that fell out from that. And the media covered that forever about how terrible nuclear was. It rivals wartime atrocities and total death. I mean, literally tens of millions of people murdered and trillions of wealth destroyed, children traumatized, learning disabilities, turbo cancers, just treason, sedition, and crimes against humanity. It trusts the science, was priestcraft. It wasn't science. It was cultism. And you want to talk about honest weights and measures. This was one of the greatest displays for the world to see, that dishonest weights and measures, lies about laws and principles, is an abomination. And those willing to go to the extent of premeditated mass extinction of humanity so they could maintain power and control, all to get rid of Trump and the MAGA movement so they could maintain their system of control and power. A third grader could follow the motive, follow the planning, read the documents, connect the common sense dots, and understand the debauchery of this invisible architecture and these principalities of darkness that have been with us since we've been here on earth. And to know it and not address it is probably the greatest act of cowardice any one of us could actually ever do. Once you know it, you cannot unknow it. And I want to thank President Trump, Dan Scavino, the Q team, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Maha movement, the MAGA movement, every broadcaster out there that has a heart and a soul, a microphone and a camera to just keep doing what they're doing.
So well said. Thank you, Captain Rob. Will, Barney, closing out.
Well, it's been great to see the results of what has been many months of investigation and work and gathering intelligence by Tulsi. The last 2 Fridays, she has dropped bombs. So the previous Friday, she dropped the truth that the U.S. Taxpayer money was being used to fund 120 bioweapons labs across 30 different nations. Very terrible stuff. It wouldn't be surprised me to find Ebola and a bunch of other weird stuff in the mix of that. Okay. But a lot of bad stuff was going on there. Gain of function was happening. And then of course she just dropped this about Fauci, that not only was he the one behind all the gain of function, he was basically the Dr. Mengele of our day, but that he lied to Congress and everybody about it. And, thank you, Rob, your comments there about how many were affected by this. Millions of lives, millions. So it's incredible to see. And this sets the stage for what will be Nuremberg 2.0. Clearly, some people are going to be brought to account for this, because this is crimes against humanity. This is something to hang for. And at Nuremberg, that's what we saw. We saw the hanging of people during that time. For those that don't remember, well, look it up, okay? So this is paving the way for that. But those aren't the only hand grenades that she dropped. She left a whole stack of hand grenades for Bill Pulte to toss out. And wait till those start coming out. I think it's interesting that they're removing her at this point in time. And she's taking a back seat. She's saying, now I've got to go take care of my husband and all of that. But it's taking a target off of Tulsi at a very critical time when there's a whole bunch of stuff to come out. And I think the election fraud and everything is the next round of grenades to drop. But this is being done at a time. Why? Are we going to see Tulsi come back later and she needs to keep herself protected so she can come back and run for office? Do not be surprised if that occurs. And the other thing that people kept saying, they were saying, oh, Pam Bondi's doing nothing. Pam Bondi did nothing, but she just left recently, and now we have to have this acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, and now he's getting stuff done. He's indicting people. Well, I have something to say to folks that are saying Pam Bondi did nothing. You don't start indictments without months and months of investigation and preparing cases. So you can't say she didn't do anything, but she certainly was pulled out of harm's way before the big stuff dropped. Is this a protection mechanism? I think it could have been. So I think there's going to be a lot more to come that we could attribute to the patriotism of Tulsi Gabbard, but it's being revealed by another to keep the target off of her. And I think that was part of Trump's strategy. He tends to want to protect the women he cares about and who are doing a good job around him.
Thank you, Will. I think of musical chairs and swivel seats. We see a lot of that going on with people in and out being deployed and utilized to the points that you were just raising. And I think we can expect to see more of that as part of the president's modus operandi. Good analysis. Closing comments on Tulsi and anything, Kristy, as we wrap up the broadcast.
Well, there's a lot that Tulsi knew, and I think she held back to the very end for everything's timing here. This is a divine operation, in my opinion, and she couldn't necessarily act on everything she knew while she was in there. But look what she did at the very, very end. NSA flagged an encrypted signal from the Colorama, Washington, D.C. It's Obama's residence. And it was the same residence that hosted 147 meetings with sitting Democrats since January of 2021. And it ran a shadow communications network for 5 years while America thought that, Obama was just retired, enjoying himself, but he never left. And Gabbard knew this, and that's why she signed the D-class order on her last day, June 18th. Not because she was leaving, but because she wanted it irreversible. There were 4.2 million documents, and they were buried inside. And on page 12,441, a classified NSA intercept showed direct operational orders from Obama. Things like delay the certification, block the border bill, and ensure the laptop stays buried. Those were orders from Obama. So those were his words. It was his encryption key and his server. So the Operation Crossfire Omega was activated on June 8th, and Trump was briefed, and he said 5 words: he doesn't get a deal. And what he did was so heinous. I mean, not just the Fauci stuff. I mean, it was just outrageous. 2.1 billion routed through 7 shell foundations to Swiss accounts. Direct instructions to maintain surveillance on Trump after leaving office. And he just basically said there was a file named Contingency 47, which was a plan to prevent Trump's second term. Get this, by any means, John. In other words, do what you have to do. And how many times has Trump almost been assassinated? I mean, this is the nastiest politics I've ever seen. And when Biden's transcripts were released, those transcripts, the judge who ruled on June 21st, those transcripts contained one sentence that ended everything. And it was, Barack told me not to worry. He said it was handled. So there we go.
Yep, and look how wrong one can be. 2016 was never supposed to play out the way it did, according to them. But God had a different plan. Again, God, Trump, the military, the white hats, and we the people. Nothing can stop what's coming. I want to thank our brave and beautiful beings on this panel for doing what it is you do at this time in history. It doesn't come without great sacrifice, particularly those that swore the oath and served, like Captain Rob and Colonel Tom Lennox. But each and every one of us as civilians doing our duty, I thank you very, very much. And the best way for our audience to contact our panel, Colonel Tom Lennox, do you still correspond with the public? If so, do you want to share your email address again to the world?
Yeah. tlennox99@gmail.com. And right now I'm a little bit behind on answering people's emails because I've been cleaning up this house, getting my office reestablished. But I'm getting ready to start. They've got a few still sitting there on the shelf that I need to answer, just so people
No
know
problem.
that if I see an email from them, I will answer it at some point.
Thank you, sir. Captain Rob, best way to people to follow you and your platform.
Sure. You can go to just cool.show. It's KUWL.SHOW. And if you put a /links, LINKS, that'll give you every social media property that I have.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And Will Barney, best way to people to follow your work, I'm not sure if you're able
Sure.
to communicate with the public at this time, but go ahead and unleash it, please.
We do the best we can. So yeah, you can just go to Enoch GS. It's Enoch Global Services, enochgs.com, and go to the contact page. It shows all of their X accounts and Truth Social, YouTube, all of that, and you can follow us there. You can also send a message to our team. Some of those I answer myself. So if you get a response back from me, you're a lucky one because I'm busy. But yeah, you can reach out to us. We'll get back to you and help you any way that we can.
Understood. Thank you, sir. And Kristy Allen, people should follow Tsunami of Truth at JMC Broadcasting, but how else can people follow you? What other platforms and any information you want to provide where people can connect up with you personally?
Well, you can go to my email. It's kristystsunami@gmail.com, all lowercase. And I'm on Facebook, Kristy Allen. I'm still accepting friends, and I've kind of cut it off at 5,000. Maybe that'll change. But anyway, my husband has it's consciousnesssystems.com, where he talks about his astounding work on the 253 circuits of the body and how God just kind of communicates with us 24/7 and through our organs and glands. And that's where our emotions come from. A lot of people don't know that, but that's his work. And only he's doing it that I know of. And he's got a book out called Know Thyself, Your Body's Wisdom for Living Consciously.
Thank you very much. And to our viewers, as we wrap up now, you can visit jmcbroadcasting.com, click on contributors on the upper left-hand navigation bar, and all these contributors and many others that you see on all our programming, their picture, their bio, and links to their world is also there if you weren't able to capture it in this broadcast. So again, thank you all very, very much. Incredible information, great analysis, and very inspirational. Lots of truth bombs in this episode, folks. To our viewers, get some skin in the game. Share the show everywhere. That sounds like I'm feedbacking, but share the broadcast. It's important. And we've now closed the chapter, at least in my mind, on what really took place on the White House South Lawn at the UFC Freedom 250. And boy, the best is yet to come. Subscribe for free at jmcbroadcasting.com. Thank you for liking, following, and sharing our work. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.